Usually here to do an icebreaker. He's given it to me, so I'm not quite as sunny, but I'll try my best. But before we do that, because I see some new faces and I don't know everybody and I don't know if everybody knows everybody, let's do just an introduction of like who you are and what you do. And yeah, I'll start. So I'm Pam Whiteley. I do work with Fairfield ED as their community resource and training specialist. And I will throw it to Austin. Austin, right?
Yep.
Yeah, great.
My name is Austin Hicks. I am a program development representative for ViaQuest. So really just serve as the main contact for all of our business lines within all the counties that we serve.
I'm Nicole Little with Safe and Home. So I am actually just temporarily covering this county. Alyssa was here prior.
Yeah. Welcome. And you said your first name was Nicole. Go ahead.
Lynn Lowry, I'm actually an independent provider, and I've got been for the last 3 years.
Okay, well, welcome out to the world.
Coming up on my 3-year compliance review, and I thought, well, maybe I better get some education.
Perfect, yes. Awesome.
I'm a teacher writer. I work for the county board in the resource management department. Budgets.
Budgets.
Costs, that kind of stuff.
In short, budgets, just leave that,
Budgets.
yeah.
Authorizing your costs.
Yeah.
I'm Teresa Setzer, I'm the regional director with REM.
Right, okay.
I'm Joy Kerrigan, the area director with REM.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys.
Alfreda Mensah, support services.
What was the services? Okay. Awesome, welcome.
I'm Jamie Rigsby. I work for county board with provider and community resources department.
Yeah. Awesome.
Good morning, my name is Kristen Thorne and I'm the provider resource specialist with the county board. For any of you that are new, if you need to use the restroom or step out, down the hallway to the right would be the restrooms. And hope you guys enjoyed today's presentation.
Okay, so to get things kicked off, what we've started doing, and some of you guys probably know this, but we have incorporated an icebreaker at the beginning of every meeting. What we were finding is like we were kind of gathering, but nobody was really getting to know people outside of just like, I'm me and here's my job. So, but we're humans, right? So we can relate to one another. So here's what Sunny said to do, is because, what?
If he was here, he's just so.
It would be so much better, I know, okay.
I know you're doing a great job. That's
Thank you, thanks Jamie, that's what you meant to say, I know. So, in light of Thanksgiving coming up next week, right? Wow, it's already here upon us. What he was gonna do was a gratitude snowball, that's what it was called, right? Gratitude snowball. And so what you have is a piece of paper, a white piece of paper. You are going to jot down something that you are thankful for, that you're giving gratitude to. And once you do that, you're gonna crumple it all up into a snowball. And then I'll tell you what we'll do next. So go ahead and do that.
Just one thing, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you can list them out if you got lots of things.
So sorry I'm late.
Welcome, come on in, it's okay. There's some seats up here if you want to sit. You can sit in the back too if you want. Now what we'll do is we will rise and we will, from you guys, you're gonna go on this side of the room. That's a far throw. Yes, you guys come over here to the wall. And the rest of you, this group, yeah, but I don't know, we're gonna throw them at each other. So that's a far and these aren't very heavy. So what we'll do.
Take a lot of coffee.
confidence in us.
Well, it's actually more the paper I don't have confidence in.
You guys have seen me throw.
So this
Nobody's in any
is
real
probably
danger.
good, right? You can
I think so.
chuck it at somebody, I'm gonna join you.
Have somebody, okay.
No, you need to do this. What we're gonna do is write down something you're thankful for.
Okay.
Gratitude. So you think about that while I get. You work with an agency
I
or?
do, I work with Alpha and Omega.
Okay, so we have Livni
Yes.
with Alpha and Omega here today with us. Take your time, we're just waiting on you. No pressure. You got it?
Yeah.
All right, so crumble it up like a snowball. You look like you got like a Austin, yeah, he's like, who am I taking out?
That's just a single that I have.
Yeah, so, what's that?
Throwing back and
No, what we're gonna do is a 3, 2, 1 throw. Oh. 3, 2, 1 throw, you're gonna chuck it at somebody. I mean, don't like take them out, but yeah, that's why I said you might wanna come closer. And then, after we do that, you're gonna pick up a snowball that has been thrown to you, or at you. And then we'll share out. Ready, 3, 2, 1, throw!
Hey, that wasn't there.
Oh, I don't want my, I get this one.
There was more than,
All right, so now what we'll do is open yours up. And Kristen, what's yours say?
Healthy family.
Mine says, my 3 children, Libby, Abram, and Veda.
Beta.
Veda.
Meetings in person again.
Good.
mine says family.
Family.
Since I'm thankful for having the opportunity to serve.
Wow, nice. All right, what's your family? Family.
Okay. My children, Olivia and Amanda, and I'm wrong about the names. Husband Jeff, siblings Kevin, Sharon, somebody else. Robin. Thank you. I could have just made something up, I guess. My dog Dottie, my job, the company I work with, friends. And I couldn't read the Lincoln, something.
Oh, my grandson Lincoln.
Grandson Lincoln.
Thanks. So this is yours.
Sorry.
Nice.
I'm sorry, you could say, you didn't have to say it.
That's okay. There you go.
Mine says family, friends, and health.
Mine says my home.
My health and my family.
Sunshine, family, and health.
Beautiful. That's a lot to be thankful for. That's great. So yeah, so that was our icebreaker to get to know one another. We're all thankful. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Best snowballs we can.
Best snowballs, yeah. If it was snowing outside. Do you want me to take this?
Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce our Assistant Superintendent, David Orr. David, take it away.
Not a little longer?
You didn't send me anything.
Oh. I'm kidding. Good morning. It's great to be with you all. As Kristen said, my name's David. I'm the Assistant Superintendent here, and as of last night, will become on January 1st the Superintendent of Fairfield GD. So I'm excited to continue the work and the mission that we have been involved in here for the last 24 years that John T, our current superintendent, has been here working on. And we're looking forward to great days ahead, a new sort of, not even a new chapter so much, it's sort of a whole new volume as we think about John and what he's done and his legacy here. But we can't move to a new volume, to a new chapter or book without building off of the past. And so we're thankful for John and all that he's done, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you as we continue forward. And let me just say, as we move toward Thanksgiving, thank you for all that you do. Direct support professionals are the backbone of our DD delivery system, and so I appreciate you and the organizations that you may work for, and all those that are working directly with individuals that we support. What I was asked to talk about for just a little while today is change and the fact that we're all living in a current reality of change. And you might say, well, you don't know me, and I only see, I know a couple people around the tables, but you say, well, how could you know what our current reality is? How could you know what we're going through because I don't know you? But the inevitable reality is that we're all, no matter who we are or what organization we work for, what kind of work that we do, we're all experiencing change. Everything is changing. And we realized this fact. We realized it when the pandemic hit in March of 2020. We've realized it throughout the pandemic as we've all begun to emerge. We even heard it today, thankful to be back to in-person meetings. So as we continue the evolution, I think that somehow we as people, regardless of what we do, but especially given the work that we do and the different oversight organizations, and you've got the state and the legislature and the local county board and all the provider organizations and independent providers. There's so many people that are involved in this that we're going to have to find a way somehow to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, to get comfortable with change. And so we just realize, we know that everything is changing. Some may not like the fact that everything's changing. Some may not want to admit or recognize that everything is changing, to give in to that reality. But unfortunately, whether we like it or not, whether we try to fight against it or not, whether we try to recognize it and decide to do so or not, everything is changing. During one employment experience that I had many years ago, the organization and company spent a lot of time focused in on positive affirmations and the way that we think. The fact that the things that we say to ourselves, the words that we say inside our mind, the things that we may say out loud to ourselves when we're alone, they have impact. Those things, that inner dialogue that we have has an impact, and it has the ability to help bring about whatever it is. So if we have a negative attitude, we've met people with a negative attitude before, and what will they say? Well, their whole life's a disaster, right? Because they're attracting all of those negative things to them because of their negative attitude and mindset. Where someone with a positive attitude and mindset, it's the exact opposite. Now, there's nothing magical or mystical about it. It's just simply that we are attracted to, and things are attracted to us based on our mindset, whether it's positive or whether it's negative. And so this company, this organization that I worked for, would send us away right at the beginning of our onboarding process with them to a 2-day training, all about positive mindset and positive affirmations. And I can't tell you how concerned I was about going away to this 2-day training, because for those of you who perhaps are my age or older, you'll remember Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live. I'm good enough and I'm smart enough and doggone it, people like me, right? That's what I thought it was going to be like. And it was just like that. But as I sat through the training, I began to understand the power that our inner dialogue, that our own mindset has to bring about the things that we want in life. And, it's really true. Henry Ford said it best: whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. What we think has power. So some of this started to sink in, and I really started to pay attention to the things that I said to myself, to those positive affirmations, the things that I wanted to bring about. And one of the affirmations that this company had was the affirmation that we would have to say time and time again to ourselves and out loud: change is easy. We were working, not unlike us in this particular industry and field, we were working in an industry that was changing at breakneck speed. Every day, something was different, something was changing. And we weren't allowed to go around and say, oh boy, here we go again. Something's changing. Oh no, here we go. They're making me change again. Oh, they're making us do this. We have to do this. The change. We couldn't say, especially out loud, and we were encouraged not to say to ourselves internally, the fact that change is so hard. Just change is hard. Instead, we had it plastered everywhere. We had it on our lanyard and name badge. Change is easy. It's easy to say that change is easy, but we know the reality. Now, positive affirmation is important. We should say these things. Saying that change is easy can help it be easier, but the reality is change is not always easy. I can tell myself I'm a great Olympic figure skater, but just because I say it to myself doesn't make it true. But it can be truer when we think these things. And so think about that idea that change is always easy, because even though we know it's not, thinking positively will help it to be easier. Maybe never easy, but easier. As the prophetic rock band Van Halen said, change, nothing stays the same. My little blipper's not working. Are you? You can't.
It was my director.
Tell your director he's swagger jacking me. So change, nothing stays the same. And we used to have this adage, right? We used to have this saying, well, nothing stays the same, but change is constant. Nothing changes except, the fact that change comes along. But even change, in all that we've gone through over the last 3 years, even change now has changed. Even change is inconsistent. Change has changed. What are some ways that change has changed? Sam Chan wrote a book, and he had 3 different ways, 3 different sort of areas where this idea that even change has changed has happened. And one's our environment. Our environments have changed. People working remotely, working from home, many businesses who close and may never reopen, the way that we shop and the way that we dine out or now in, the way that we get medical care virtually now through telehealth. All this stuff existed out on the periphery before March of 2020. But when the pandemic hit, all of this stuff exploded. Even the way we go to church or worship has changed. Our environments have changed. But not only our environments have changed, but we have changed. We have had to learn to live with rampant change in our lives over the last couple of years. Unbelievable uncertainty, a raft full of nagging fears, some of which have now subsided, but for some of those fears remain. We're different today than we were a couple of years ago, because even the fact that change has changed is occurring in each of our lives. We have changed, and then finally the people around us have changed. Our environments have changed, we have changed, and the people around us have changed. They're frustrated, and some are isolated and depressed and anxious and angry. We see this happening. They don't feel safe in some instances. They're different. The way we're living is different. The way we are is different. The way others happen to be is different, because what we've all experienced together has changed all of us. And so the next logical question as we think about this is, well, what are we supposed to do with all this? How do we reconcile this fact that everything is changing and that even change has changed and that it's not going to stop and it's not going to slow down, and that perhaps this is what we kind of talk about when we say our new normal? This is it. This is our new normal. That we're living in a time of constant change. Whether it's easy or whether it's hard, it's going to continue. And you can decide not to accept it. You can decide that you're not going to change, to not accept the reality. But if you do, you have to understand the decision that you're making. You are like a boat in the middle of the ocean with no engine, no sail, no oar, floating aimlessly. If you are unwilling to accept the truth and reality that everything has changed, and today and tomorrow and next week and next year, everything will continue to change. Unfortunately, if we're going to be successful, if we're going to provide the best service and support we can to those that we're working with on a daily basis, we cannot be like a baseball player who refuses to take his foot off of first base in an attempt to get to second base. He wants to go, he wants to run, He wants to get to the next base, but he's afraid. There's fear involved. There's risk involved. Because as he takes his foot off of that base and starts running to the second one, he may get tagged out. We can't be afraid to take the next steps forward. We can't be afraid to take off and run toward that next goal, that next thing, that because we're afraid of change. We can't get to second base without risk, without taking our foot off of first base and risk what might happen. Maybe you're not a sports fan, maybe you're not a baseball fan, come on in. Think of it like this, instead of baseball, think of a trapeze artist. She wants nothing more than to fly through the air. But she has to let go of the bar first. And she's afraid. She's afraid to let go and to sail through the air. She's afraid of what might happen. She's afraid of the unknown. She hopes as she looks down that there's a net underneath her, but she's so high up that she can't tell. She's afraid that if she lets go, it might hurt. And she just can't bring herself to let go of that first bar and to sail through the air to the second one. Maybe you can't bring yourself to reach out, let go of the first bar and grab on to that second bar because you're afraid. Afraid of what might happen, afraid of the unknown, afraid that it might hurt. Transition and change can be difficult. We should say it's easy, but we know that it can be a challenge. And so what should we do? What must we do? Well, one of the things that I think we can do if we want some practical application to dealing with this idea of getting comfortable being uncomfortable, dealing with change every single day in our life is this. We have to starve our fear and feed our faith. Now, I'm not talking about a religious kind of faith. I'm talking about the kind of faith and confidence I have in myself. The kind of faith and confidence that I have in my own ability to believe and know that I'm going to make it through this, that I'm going to take the next steps, that in the end, everything is going to be okay. We need to starve our fear and feed our faith. There's a story about an old Cherokee chief, and he's talking one day to his grandson, and he says, "Grandson, a fight is going on inside of me. And it's going on inside of every other person in the world as well. And it's a fight between two wolves. One is fear. This wolf of fear manifests itself as anger and envy and sorrow and regret and greed, arrogance and self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, ego. But the other is faith. This wolf is joy and peace, patience, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion. The same fight going on inside of me, he said to his grandson, is going on inside of you and everyone else that set foot on the face of the earth as well. And his grandson stood and thought for a moment. And he looked up at his grandfather and said, "Grandpa, which one's going to win?" And the wise Cherokee chief replied, "The one that you feed. The one that you feed is going to win." We have to starve our fear and feed our faith in ourselves. John Maxwell wrote a book just right before the pandemic, and it was called Leadership. And it was all of the ideas that we have to do to shift our leadership in order to be successful in the 21st century. And in case no one has ever told you, you are a leader. And you say, "No, I'm not a leader. I'm not a manager in my organization, or I don't supervise anyone, so I'm not a leader." But that's not the definition of true leadership. True leadership is not positional. The true definition of actual leadership is influence. And you have influence. You have influence with your peers and coworkers. You have influence with the people and the families that you support. And so by the very definition of the word, you are a leader. So what are some things as leaders that we have to do to shift and ensure success as we move in to this next year and continue to deal with change? Well, one of the things that he talked about was a leadership that takes us from maintaining to creating. See, we can't live in maintenance mode. So many organizations, so many people, they just live in maintenance mode. They just keep doing the same things that they've done over and over and over again and hope that they'll continue to see success. But that's not the way it works. If we're not innovating, if we're not changing, if we're not moving things forward, then we're like the guy in the boat. We're stuck. We're just maintaining. We're not creating. We're not innovating. We're not doing anything new. And there's a great book, if you like to read, Malcolm Gladwell has a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And the idea behind it is that you maybe have seen unbelievable success in your life, your personal life, your professional life, whatever the case may be. But whatever brought you to today is unlikely, if you just kept doing the same thing over and over again, it's unlikely to get you to where you would want to be tomorrow. What got you here today is not what's going to get you where you want to go tomorrow. Now, it compounds. You got to keep doing that stuff. But what change will we make? What innovation will we make? How can we make a difference and move forward by changing and innovating? And so he talks about these zones that we get stuck in. And the first zone is the coasting zone. It's that exact idea. I'm doing nothing. I'm just coasting. It's not that I'm just doing the same thing I've been doing. I'm doing nothing. I'm just coasting along through life. I'm not being purposeful and intentional. I'm not making any sort of change. I'm not even acknowledging change. I'm just coasting. That's the first zone. We can't live in that zone if we want to be successful. We can't live in that zone if we want to provide the best service and support we can to those that we're working with each day. So we have to move from the coasting zone. The next zone is the comfort zone. This is the zone where I just keep doing the same thing I've always done. I'm just doing it again because I did it yesterday and nothing blew up, and so I'm gonna do it again today. And I'm just in my comfort zone. Nothing new, nothing innovative. I'm just comfortable. Can't stay there for long either. We're going to be stuck. So we move to the next zone as we continue to shift, which is the challenge zone. And the challenge zone is when I begin to do different things. Maybe I do things differently. Maybe I do different things, but in the challenge zone, I step out of my comfort zone and I begin to make changes that are going to move me to where I need to go as the world continues to change around me. So move from coasting, move from comfort, move though even from the challenge zone to the last zone, to the fourth zone, which is the creative zone. In the creative zone, I'm not just doing things that I've never done before. I'm not just doing things differently than I've ever done them before. But in the creative zone, now I'm thinking things differently than I ever have before. I'm thinking and creating and moving forward in a way that isn't just about doing, but it's about intention. It's about philosophy. It's about what I believe in, what I think. And so we have to make this shift, this leader shift from maintaining to creating, or else we're going to get stuck. If we don't, we're just like the guy in the boat, in the ocean, no motor, no sail, bobbing up and down, drifting aimlessly. So what do? How do we move forward and make these shifts? How do we get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable? We have to let go. Like the trapeze artists who can't let go. At some point, we have to let go of the bar, fly through the air, and trust that I'm either going to grab the next bar, that the person who's supposed to grab me is going to do it, that there's a net underneath. In case all of that doesn't happen, we have to let go, move to the next bar, embrace this idea of change and that it's happening all around. But I can see that perhaps we're a little apprehensive about that. Perhaps we're a little scared. There's fear there, and we're concerned. What's going to happen? What about the unknown? What if I fail? What if it hurts? And I get it, I really do. I've been living life in transition just like you for the last several years. And so what has been helpful to me is to look at this a little bit differently, because maybe you can't let go of the bar. Maybe you can't take your foot off of the base and sprint towards second, but maybe you don't have to. At least not yet. I have a friend who lives in California, and one day he was with a group of his friends and they were having dinner on a rooftop restaurant. And as they got seated, this restaurant had these panoramic windows all around. And so as they looked out of these windows, as they were preparing to have dinner in this conversation, this is what they saw. People's clothes hanging on the line, rooftops with air conditioning units, the leftover and remnants of an industrial age gone by. This was the view, unremarkable. So they got settled and they ordered their drinks and they started to have a conversation, and they got a good ways into this conversation. They were probably 15 minutes into it. But what they didn't realize was that this rooftop restaurant with these panoramic windows rotated just a little bit, just a couple of degrees every single minute. But enough that 15 minutes later, when they looked up and out those windows again, this is what they saw. A beautiful sunset over the Bay Bridge. No more rooftops, no more people's laundry, no more air conditioning units. This is what their view was. And it was as a result of just a few degrees of change, just a little bit of change. Maybe that's where you are this morning. Maybe you can't let go of the bar. Maybe you can't take your foot off the base and sprint. Or maybe you don't have to. What if you were to change today just a little bit? Just a couple of degrees. Look at the difference. If we take our foot off the base, if we let go of the bar, look at the difference. From rooftops to a beautiful view, just with a little bit of change. A little bit of change today, a couple of degrees of change tomorrow. Over time, these things compound. There's nothing more valuable in our lives than the compound effect of positive habits in our lives. It makes all of the difference. So have I just a couple of degrees, I just got to do a little bit today. I don't have to jump off the bar and let go. I don't have to run off the base, just a little bit, a couple of degrees, compounded over time. And as you look back over the last weeks, the last month, and the last year, you will see that just a few degrees of change compounded over time will make an unbelievable difference in your life. And so consider approaching change in this way. I don't have to blow everything out of the water and make every single change that I know I need to make today, just a little bit, a couple of degrees, and you will see a significant difference over time. That's what I've been trying to do. Listen, let me just tell you something. It's really easy to talk about this stuff. It is much more difficult to do it in real life. I get it. And so I'm on this journey with you. And I just want to encourage you today, especially as we move through Thanksgiving, into the holiday season, and then into a new year. Just a little bit of change here, a little bit of change there. and you will start to see the difference that you're hoping to see in your life, in your work, and in the world in which we live. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I'd be happy to stick around and answer any questions, but I appreciate it, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Thanks, David.
Hey, David?
Anyone have questions? Talk about anything?
Resonating with you? What some like struck a chord?
None of y'all are experiencing change, right?
So are you willing to come out and talk to our like program directors?
Sure. Yep, I love speaking and doing this kind of thing. I've given this presentation out to a number of different groups because it doesn't matter which group I go to, the presentation is applicable and relevant to everyone today. And so I'd be happy to come out and meet with your team. Pam has my contact information or Kristen, and so you can get with them and they can forward it along. I'd be happy to set something up, sure, for anyone, any of you that would like me to come out. All right, well, thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Well, I'll say a lot resonated with me. My brain was flashing through lots of different things. And so it's so applicable to what we're gonna talk about today, what we're gonna talk about throughout the next year. And I would say with Fairfield DD, one of those things that we recognize is that change is inevitable, and rather than, with all of the things that have happened in the last couple of years of saying like, man, I wish we could just go back, which I've heard a lot of providers say, I wish we could get back to where we used to be. And I don't know that that's where we need to go, that's what we have to talk about. And that is really the hard conversation that I think we're having, because everybody's different and we're all on these different journeys, right? So where are we going? Because we can't go backwards, we can only go forward, right? So there's a lot of great stuff in there and nuggets, and I'm sure you guys will probably be digesting this for a little while, so. However, we will move on. And we're gonna go back to the DD world and the compliance world, and we're gonna talk about RFPs, because those are exciting. So request for providers. There's a little bit of shift in those processes and changes, and we have Ann Mikan and Michelle Dexter on Zoom who are going to update you on what some of those changes are. Take it away, ladies.
I feel like he set us up. Let's talk about change. Here's change.
Yep.
I apologize to not be with you in person. I'm actually doing my other job as pizza delivery in about 45 minutes and needed to be in Lancaster today.
Other duties is assigned.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've gone through a lot of changes throughout our agency, and we've really been trying to look at some of our processes and make them easier and make them a little more fluid. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through the front side of the request for provider process. And then Michelle is here. I only know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know. So Michelle's going to be here to help us kind of figure out some of those specific questions that you all might have about the process or what happens after. So in the past, if you remember, you typically would get an email from Tina Smith saying that there was a request for providers, and she would pull a list of anybody who kind of met the criteria and send an email. If your email inbox is anything like mine, it's a little full and a little hard to manage. And so we're hoping to kind of streamline that process so that you can go and look for those requests whenever you can see a bunch of them at once. You're not trying to look through a bunch of different emails all at one time. So let me kind of show you what we're looking at. We are kind of still taking feedback on this a little bit. Our hope is that this will go live in January. So, all of those requests coming up through until just the end of December will still go out the same way as we kind of work to get everybody educated and on board. But so I'm just going to share my screen, and you'll be able to get to this straight from our Fairfield DD website. So you won't have to remember any other links, that kind of thing. So if I go here, I've added a tab just to make this a little bit easier, even for you all. That's literally provider resources. So you can just go to provider resources and then request for provider postings. I know that RFP means different things in different fields, so trying to make this as simple as possible for all of you. So anytime a new RFP is sent in, we're going to add it here, newest to oldest on this website. So you'll be able to scroll down and see as all of the information and all of the RFPs that are open right now. So for those of you who are looking, maybe you're a independent provider that's trying to get, a good full work day, and you can decide that you want to pair, like, there's somebody here that needs 2 hours in the morning and there's somebody there that needs 2 hours in the afternoon. We're hoping that this will kind of make that process easier. The only thing that we're still working on is the geographic area. I know for providers who aren't familiar with Clearfield County as much, sometimes some of our small little spaces, they're kind of surprised at how long it takes to get from, say, Reynoldsburg or someplace like that. And so we're hoping to be able to put the geographic area there as well. I'm working with the auditor's office to get a good map to kind of do that. But we have to ensure that that is HIPAA compliant. So that piece is the only one that still might adjust a little. Trying to get you all a little bit more information, getting, the things that you might actually want to know about that request for provider. And then instead of having to email Tina back, there's a form here that will pop up that it's basically the same questions that you filled out in the past. But that's all going to get sent to Tina, who's just going to verify and pass all that information on to the case manager, the ISC, the ISCA. Will handle that part, so you don't have to worry about who you're reaching out to there. You will get a pop-up when you submit this. Thanks, we got it. So you know that you got it. And it'll have Tina's email there. So if you're an agency provider or an independent provider and you have information that you want to add, a brochure, a website link, something like that, you can send that to her and it'll, populate straight from the pop-up. Hopefully this way you can just know that there will be RFPs out there. When it's filled, we will take it down so that it'll kind of fall off. But you can assume that if it's there, it is still accepting. Michelle, did I forget anything on this part?
No, not at all.
Do we have questions, comments, thoughts? Did you have enough coffee?
I guess I have a question.
Please.
So let's just say we put in this form, and what is kind of the timeline? Is there a date that they're going to get back with? The families have decided that maybe these agencies they would like to, bring forth, or are you guys going to let people know, like, hey, we received your submission, but unfortunately the family is moving in another direction? Or how does the follow-up process kind of work?
So once we receive the information in the form, as Ian said, it's passed on to the ISC and ISCA who works with the family. So once that a provider has been chosen, then we will get back with the other ones that responded to let them know.
Okay.
And then we'll also be taking it off. So that's the easiest way. You're going to be able to see that it's gone from the website. So as soon as it's filled, it will be gone. That provider posting will not be there.
And this is a work in progress. We own our website. So in that, like, I can go in and make changes, or Tina can make changes whenever we need to. So hopefully it will be a pretty live, things aren't going to be sitting out there a long time waiting on somebody from somewhere else to make that adjustment. But we are trying to be intentional with our communication to the providers, to the families, to the ISC assistants, everybody, so that we can kind of keep everybody in the loop. With free choice of provider, it inevitably ends up with the family, but we're going to try to make sure we close that communication loop so that you aren't waiting and never hearing anything. And then you find out that it was filled 6 months ago. We realize that this is, important for you all as well.
And I know those times differ each situation, and sometimes we have RFPs that are posted and we may have to post them again because maybe we didn't find someone or the family didn't choose someone. So I know those in this process, you'll see that RFP still be, it'll be there until we find someone. So
Any other questions or thoughts? This is live on our website, so I would encourage you to take a look and see. We just wanted to talk with you. I know that January seems a little far away right now, but you all aren't coming together in December, so we wanted to kind of let you know. And then we'll be sending communication out, following up with kind of where to find this, how to do it, contact information for emails if you need help with something.
Is there anything, Joe?
Well, we appreciate all that you do, and I hope that you have a good holiday season as the craziness comes upon us, whether we're ready it or not. Pam, do you need anything else from us? Or Kristen, or?
I don't think so. I stepped out, so you must have knocked it out of the park, because it's quiet in here.
It's the second meeting I've gone to today that no one was speaking, and it kind of makes me nervous.
Silenced, yeah. I will say that they're both super approachable. If you are working through things, please reach out and offer insight. That's the only way they will know what to do and how to do it, is if you give feedback. So it's always a work in progress, because the theme of the day is change is always a constant, right? So it just needs to be effective. That's the most important thing.
And we are trying to make this be a little bit more streamlined and a little easier, and knowing that we all get tons of messages and have 19 other things that we're doing. So if there's something that we can change that would make it even better or easier for you all, we would appreciate letting us know.
Perfect. Thanks, ladies, for showing up. It was
Thank
nice to
you.
see Cool. All right. So moving on, MUI will close us out from 11:15. So we have about 20 minutes to kind of give some more updates on some changes that are coming. And these aren't like massive changes really, but it's that tweak, the small tweak. We're ever evolving and reorganizing to move forward. And so some of the things, we had a provider engagement committee that kind of got together, and it was like, how do we get providers more engaged with one another, with the mindset of like, we're all almost singularly focused. We're all doing this job and we're all in this field for very similar reasons, right? But does anybody have like, what's their reason that they show up every day to do what they do? And it's on Monday, that's a lie.
I just try to do the best I can do every day.
And what happens if you don't do the best that you can do every
I
day?
have to make a new list and start it
Tweak it again, right?
and reprioritize for that day or whatever. I mean, I have one of those weeks right now. So, yeah, I mean, it's just live life and make the best of it for what I do and for the folks I serve.
Beautiful, yeah. You're there for the people, right? Yeah. And they rely on you to do your best, but you're human, so we all just show up to do the best we can every day, right? Yeah, absolutely. Anybody that's similar, like you kind of feel like you're in it for maybe a little bit? Do you have anything better or different you want to share?
It's just for the folks that we work with.
Yeah. Yes. So we show up because we believe in a population of people that people don't believe in, right? That's why we do what we do. We just have to make sure that we truly believe in the potential of this population of people. And so we're going to work a lot over the next year on mindset and what does that look like and what does that potential and empowerment and innovation look like for a population of people that have been, I'll say for lack of a better word, oppressed for many, many years. And so it's time for that to be done and over with. All right, so this provider engagement committee kind of came together. We had a lot of discussions and thoughts. And what we recognize is like, how can we be more of a support, more effective support? We looked at the RFP process, we did it, but like, that's just one example of how our organization is always looking at how we can better support you guys. So there was 3 areas. One was, how can these network meetings be more effective for you and for the people we support? And then the other is the Excellence Network. So this is something that I think on paper is well intentioned, but is it really doing the thing that it's setting out to do? I don't know. And then the last is something that we're calling like a triage support. When we think of triage, what do we think of? It's like an emergency, right? Like I'm struggling and I need support. Because that's what we're recognizing. Engagement could not be there because I can't maintain like a homeostasis. There's no balance to what I'm doing. I'm always in survival mode. And there's a lot of organizations out there that are like that. Kim, was there anything, because Kim's in that group too, offering wonderful insight that you want to share about some of that?
I think that's really where we're at with it, but by the time we put everything on the table instead. So this is.
Yeah.
I mean, really our goal was that, years ago when this meeting started, it was really for us to help support each other. And that's still the goal, I think. But I think, for whatever reason, we're all busy, we don't have enough staff, it's hard to get things, it's hard to get things to do, and we recognize that. So how can we make this better? And how can we make it that you can get here? Like, what is it we can do that will help you? And what is it that we can do? And what is it you want to learn? What is it you want to do? And I think it's been a little different the last couple meetings that we've had. We've done some more engagement stuff. It has been really good, I think, for us to interact and participate with each other. We can talk and mingle, and we're not just sitting here in a classroom trying to get information. So I think, hands-on and doing things is much more interactive. I enjoy it more. You get to talk to people like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that, So that's really just about it. I just think we need to, we're just here to help. The county board is here to help. They are an absolute resource. And really, they're just going to help. I don't care. I can call them for anything, honestly, and get help about whatever I've got going on. So please reach out to them. But that's my soapbox.
Thank you for the commercial. That was a nice plug. Yes, so it was engagement, it's community. How are we building community? Traditionally, these meetings have been set up in a way that would fulfill your annual training requirements, right? Like there was topics that you could get, that you'll get a certificate for. If you recognize there's a shift in those annual training requirements, so the DODD is providing you with a portion of it, but then you're left with 6 hours to fill, right, that you have to do. This may or may not fulfill that because that is geared towards the person or people you're supporting. It's very individualized and it's very specific. So if I'm working with somebody who wants to get more involved in the Jewish community, I don't know anything about that. I need to learn more about that. That's my annual training. That all counts. If we're doing it together, that counts. We're working together. So it's definitely a mindset shift, and that's why we're talking a lot about that over the next year. So these network meetings, though, what we want to do is we kind of searched for lots of other providers throughout the state that could bring something that they're doing really well to us. And so that's what the whole idea was, how do we get providers to support providers more? And so just a taste of some of those people. We have Sarah Milliman. She works with GT Independence. She's going to come and she has an extensive knowledge of the DD system, of kind of the history and timeline of supporting people with disabilities. It's so important to recognize that because some of us jump into that timeline without knowing the history. We can't know a future and we're not recognizing our present unless we understand the past, right? And so she's going to do that. But what it's going to end in is a lot of discussion about vision. It's that future, where we're going. Katie Bachmeyer and Candace Peelman. Katie is with Bachmeyer Press. These are two providers that used to be providers that have kind of gone in different directions now. This is going to be a lot about telling disability positive stories. So in time and in history, disability has not always been a positive story, right? There's a lot of sorrow, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of things that aren't positive about it, but it should be. And so we're shifting that. That's a new lens that we're going to do. And when I say lens, it's actually a mirror, because who's telling stories? We are. Okay. With that, they're going to be looking for two organizations that they would be willing to support afterwards. And all of these are going to be kind of workshoppy. So that idea that we're not in a lecture room, although Sarah's might be a little bit more like that. They'll be working meetings. They're going to look for two organizations that they would consult with after, when they come. And they will be doing like, there'll be 3 sessions for each organization. What they want to do is help you brainstorm storytelling and then kind of draft something, and then what do you do with this story now? So some organizations are using Facebook, they're using social media, they have a website. What story are we telling on those platforms? Because those are to the masses. So how are we shifting from, I'm taking care of these poor sick old people that, they like to do these things and they don't have a lot of purpose, but that's okay because, for whatever reason, to no, I'm a citizen in this world. I am in this community. I have things to contribute. I have a voice to be listened to. So how are we shifting that? And I think that'll be a really cool opportunity. Starfire is another provider out of Cincinnati, Ohio. We're not really set on what they're going to chat about, but they're going to come do a 4-part series. And just so you know who they are, they've shifted. They started in, I think, 93 is when their organization started. So if you go to their website, you can see, and you can go to Katie Bachmeyer Press has a website too. So to get a better idea of what she does, if you go on there, it's very clear. Starfire is a visionary organization working to build better lives for people with disabilities. They're focused on decreasing the social isolation felt by people with disabilities. Data is clear, people with disabilities growing increasingly lonely and isolated as adults. Working with one person at a time, Starfire connects people to relationships and uncovers a person's talents and passions so they can thrive in their communities alongside their neighbors. I'm excited for what they're going to bring to us. Community Supports Incorporated is another organization from that neck of the woods, Cincinnati area. And they are going to come, they did something like it was a whole transformation where they invested in resiliency throughout their organization, what they do. And that's something we talk about is what does it look like when I as an organization invest in resiliency? And so I think that'll be a cool look at their journey. And then we had Andrea Spires with Fairfield County Foundation coming. She came in the last meeting and she'll be back. One of the things that we talked about and discussed is funding and how Medicaid funding kind of puts us in this box. It feels like I can only provide this because this is where my funding is dictating what I do. And we want to shift that. There should be no funder should tell you what you can and cannot do. So in order to do that, you're going to have to find these other funding streams to braid in with Medicaid. I'll use Medicaid for this because this is what it's made for. But in order to do the next step, the letting go of the rung and having somebody catch you, it is going to be these alternative funding streams. I'm talking about grants, I'm talking about community partners, I'm talking about fundraising, I'm talking about consulting your expertise with other organizations. How do you make money with those? So she's going to come in and just give some more detailed stuff on that. David will return. He's going to do 4 more sessions all on leadership. And so those will be throughout the year. And they're on different topics and different parts of leadership. And they're all so good. I think we've experienced all of them and they're amazing. Lori Furbush, thank you, I never get it right. She works within enabling tech. And so she's gonna come and give highlights on like the latest, greatest, or something that you might not have never known before. Those would be quick little educational sessions. Rachel McCoy is gonna do a Fulfilling Lives sessions, which basically is all about community connecting. I would tell you that there's probably not very many people who are as connected to their community as Rachel is. I think she knows so many people, she knows so many opportunities, and it's not that she doesn't know it, but her mind is always working. When she's having conversations with people, she is connecting all the time, and she makes it happen, and it's beautiful. And then me, professional development. So with that 6 hours, as ambiguous as it is, that's what I'm here to support you with. So there's lots of resources that I can give you, but I also can consult with you. Tell me who you're working with, what are you guys doing, and I will help you align that up so that the education and professional development is meaningful. All right, the Excellence Network. Any questions about the upcoming meetings over 2023? I apologize, I'm talking really fast because I'm watching the clock and want to make sure that anyone has enough time. All right, so the Excellence Network. Some of you have experienced this and you know what it used to be. I will tell you that the philosophy has always been or intended to support providers who recognize that a primary focus on compliance would not create excellence. If you just maintain compliance with the state, that's not going to get you to excellence. That's the next level. And that's when we talk about the difference between triage support. You get to the surface area, I can breathe. Now, can I get in the boat and go, right? So a lot of people are just stuck in this water, like that guy was in that boat, and they're just floating out there. So before it was, and I gave them this,
I can do it.
you can, okay, anyways, I was gonna say, we'll send it to you. I tried to create an infographic that helped lay out what this looks like. And so it's a relationally intensive, which I made some more edits to this, partnership that moves lives forward. That's what we wanna see. No more holding tanks for people. Lives are moving forward. And so what we'll do is each individually, each provider, before I think the Excellence Network was kind of like, here's the requirements that everyone should do. Here are the benefits that we try to guess that everybody might want. And it worked for some, but most, I don't think it really quite hit the nail on the head. It didn't really meet you where you are. So this is definitely going to be an individualized, person-centered journey of our team, the provider and resource, our community provider resource team, and the other network of providers. But we will have a discussion. Let's go get a cup of coffee and let's have a conversation about why you're doing what you're doing. Where do you want to go? What's getting in the way? And let's create that path so that I just think of that vision of somebody that's swinging the trapeze, right? And I'm swinging, but if nobody's there to catch me, I'm never going to let go. So what we want to do is create somebody there to catch you, that plan of moving forward. And so that it makes it easier to let go. So that's that vision of the future. So in 10 years from now, you all are celebrating something really, really fantastic and marvelous. What is it? And that's what our conversation will be on. What's the clarity? What are we celebrating 10 years from now? And then we're going to generate that plan. And then achieving greatness. So commit to a year. The plan may be like, here's a 1-year chunk. It may take us 5 years. It's going to take us 10 years, right? Because we're celebrating 10 years. But here's the first year of that. And here's the chunk that we're going to work on. And it's relationally intense, meaning the expectation is that we are going to work together. We're going to spend time in your space. We're going to have ongoing meetings. It's not going to take up a ton of time because we want it to be meaningful and respectful of your time and what you guys do. But at the same time, we together have to be committed on that 10-year celebration. Where are we going? And then if you go to the next page, it just shows you that comparison of here's what it used to be. Yeah, you can go up. The vision stays pretty much the same. So it's always been, we want a culture that's focused on potential empowerment and innovation. And that's the culture that I think Ken was talking about. How do we gain a culture in our community where we're all about that? That's what we're about. And then the goal, she went through but it was that we see, what was the goal? Go back down. See people, yes, increasing their independence and interdependence. I threw that word in there, within the community, because nobody's in the community alone, right? I have friends, I have family, I have people in my community. That's how I survive. All right, so the commitments kind of shifted a little bit, and we'll send this out to you guys. Used to be demonstrated through annual membership requirements. There's no requirements other than you're moving forward. That's the commitment. Benefits used to be that we had a list that you can earn through the demonstration of the requirements. Now it's just you have all the benefits. Whatever you need to move forward is what you have. That's what we can offer you. And then the time, it was an annual re-up, and it was based on as long as you are committed to excellence, you can have access to these things. This time is going to be, it's gonna be what's necessary for you, and it might be different. Somebody might be able to invest way more time with us than another person might, and that's okay. So we just wanna make sure that works well. Beautiful. Every small step in the right direction becomes the start of something. What we did notice though is, so there are people probably in the Excellence Network now that if we had a honest conversation, they might actually be in the triage support area. Because there's a lot of people, I don't know anybody who has enough staff. Does anybody? All right, so that's triage for me. If you've taken off a big bite and you can't chew it, that's too big of a bite. What do? You gotta fix something, right? So that's what our team is here for. How can we support you with that? That could be a look at culture. It could be a look at, do you have too big of a bite? Do you need to make some changes and shifts? And then how do we bring in more people to our mission, to our why, to where we're going, what we're doing. And so if we have these meetings and we have this discussion and it's like, here's where I want to go, and we're kind of looking at that plan, there might be a point where triage support's going to come in. It could be within, that's what I was going to throw it to you guys. Like when you're looking at your compliance reviews, when you're looking at, because this is what, when we talk about triage, it's like my basic business practices to maintain compliance. And we kind of talked about it being like documentation, policies, procedures, personnel.
Yeah, you want to make sure that obviously you're to be compliant and be in good standing, you know, with you and your staff have to have all your annual trainings, your CPR certifications, things like that. You have to understand your role and your responsibilities within the plan and the services that you're providing. If you're providing HPC services, then or if you're getting paid to provide HPC services, you should be providing HPC services, right? You've been properly trained on the individual and their plan. You have some organization in your agency, if you're an agency. And then providing the services that you agree to provide in the least restrictive environment. So when you sign the plan and say, this is what I'm gonna do, then that kind of thing. And that's just minimal, like to keep you up and running kind of things that you have to be doing. Documentation is one of those things, but that could be a whole training in itself. So
Yeah, but our resources, you know, Jamie and Kristen our primary resources in that area are so awesome at they'll come to you, they'll see what's going on, there's no shame or blame. It's like, how do we move forward from here and what are the supports? I will say there are other organizations who do have best practices. You know, some people will have organizations where compliance is no brainer. We've been doing that and we are on that next, where are we going next level? Share. You know, if you're willing to, what's worked for you could work for somebody else. So reach out to one another because that could be another great resource. The Excellence Network meetings generally are right after this, and they're once a month. Those meetings will shift a little bit too. So whatever your project is you're working on, that's where project support is. That's where the networks support one another, and anybody's welcome to come. So let's say I'm not a network member, but I could be. I want to come and just check it out and see what it is, what's it all about. It doesn't mean you couldn't learn from each other. I think that it's an interesting concept. You know, if I'm a kid with a learning disability and I'm surrounded by peers who don't, why would you take me out of that classroom when I can learn from my peers? So let's do something different if we can. So learn from each other and how we can move forward together. One last thing, and then I'm all done. Is we don't know exactly what this looks like. I definitely feel like, and maybe after Katie and Candace come, we'll have a better handle on it, but we wanted this storytelling initiative to occur. How do we get first person accounts or stories of people building their citizenship, for lack of a better word? That means, how am I building my relationships in my community? How am I building my resources in my community? How am I shifting my roles from a negative or devalued role in community to a positive, powerful role in community? And so those are some ideas. We'd like to have that to be a first person account. Does that mean that I have to be able to vocalize that? No, that's what you guys are here for. You can help give that voice, right? And so that's part of it. The other was, we really wanted an opportunity for providers to share what's good, what's happening. How are people moving forward? And we do, the county board uses these 8 guiding values And we identified a definition to those values as the Excellence Network did, and I think I took them out. But how would we use those guiding values for that storytelling or those share outs too? Resiliency, innovation, respect, transparency, collaboration, sustainability. Did I say transparency right? Independence. And one more that we will let you know later. But those are kind of the ideas. So they're broad sweeping, but I think it will help build some excitement. Any questions about the upcoming changes?
Hey Pam, it's Rachel. I don't know if you can hear me very well, and I'm gonna try not to cough, but I just wanted to say, if I was there, I'd be clapping because I think that the next year is gonna be amazing. You have put so much hard work into it, and I think that what we have coming up, you guys are all gonna benefit so much from it. So I just wanted to give Pam kudos because she's done a lot of this work, and it's gonna be really great.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I'm really excited for it too. I'm excited where we're going because it's not in the past and it's not where we're here today. We're going forward. It's gonna be awesome.
It sounds really interesting. There's a lot of information out there. And
so much.
I like speakers coming in. I think that's always.
Yeah.
I also kind of think that with David moving into the superintendent role, that he's actually taking the time out of his day in his first year to come to our provider meetings to share, because a lot of superintendents just don't do that. So I think that's something to point out that he's going, that he has, he places value in what we're doing, and that he's willing to be a part of that. So
100%. Yeah, it definitely speaks to his belief in all of you and his hope for all of you too, for sure. Okay. I'll see if, hey, do you guys you're welcome to come in. It'll take them a little bit. They're a little achy in some spaces. Back aches and some arm aches and some. Good, welcome. This is Lorelei Banks in the house. Give her a round of applause.
We're not giving a round of applause. Jen's gonna be doing all
Let
the
her stop you. You can clap.
talking.
Hi.
She's just gonna sit up here.
Let's give Jen a walk.
Hi, Jen.
Nobody run. Sorry, it's gonna take us.
Can I put faces to names? So
Yeah.
can I ask you guys your names so that I know who I'm talking to on the phone? That'd be sweet. I'm Lorelei.
Nicole with Safe and Home.
Austin Hicks at ViQuest.
Okay.
I'm Joyce.
Hi. I've never met you. Talked to you a whole lot, but never met you.
I can Stetson with Rem, Ohio.
Hi, Teresa.
Who?
I'm Cecilia from New Direction.
Lynn.
Jen's an independent provider.
I'm Lizzie Wagner and I'm with Alpha and Omega.
Okay, hi.
Alfreda Mensa.
Oh. Hi, Alfreda. And I know the rest of you. So.
Yeah.
I know. You can feel
We don't
free to
know you at
introduce
all.
yourselves if you'd like to, though.
Well, other people might not know you.
Yeah.
I'm Shelley Gold. I'm the ISC at Fairfield County Board.
Kim Conrad, I'm a residential provider in Fairfield County.
Christine Nicky, Introduction and Eligibility Specialist.
Right. Jen Walling, MUI Coordinator. I think that's what my title is. All right, so we're gonna start off today. We'll just hit it into slide mode and we'll be good. Up here I am trying to like tap it like I'm gonna be able to change it. You go to slideshow.
There we go.
And then hit. All right, so today we're gonna wrap up our series that we've been doing this year, trying to come in quarterly and do a little bit of MUI information instead of that, just annual, you got to look and hear those certain things, just really kind of piecing together some MUI things. So next slide. So in doing that, we had a section about incident reports And so we kind of dissected the incident report. Some of you all may have been here for that, or on the TV. I feel like there's probably somebody on there too, right? Like, I don't know. Hopefully I'll try to. And then we did a UI log analysis of things and how to do that. And so today what we're going to talk about is that annual report that everybody has to do. Okay, so who in here, anybody in here, is that your responsibility to do that? Okay, good. So I want to make sure that the audience I should be talking to is the people who need to do this. So, so I kind of looked at this and thought, that was magic. Oh, I don't know why it went back. Okay, well, anyway, when I saw this slide, I thought it's perfect because the UI is that little bit, and then we get to the UI log and we look at everything, and in the end of the year, we have this great big mess of stuff that we have to review and look at. So anyway, I like fun slides. All right, next one, I guess. All right, so everybody's responsible for this. So whether you're an independent provider or whether you're an agency provider, we've talked about these things before, you know, making your incident reports, doing your investigations, looking at your logs, gathering that information, and then putting it together, getting the plans updated, and then at the end, analyzing and sending in this report. So next slide. So the incident report, obviously that's where it all starts. You have to fill these out, whether it's a MUI or an incident or a UI. You're using these things as documentation, and they get labeled those things based on how they fit the rule. So it's the same form, same place that it's all going to end up. All right. Next slide. Hopefully.
It's just slow.
Yeah, I don't know what. Okay. So the unusual incidents, you know, we spend a lot of time really kind of making sure everybody's thinking about these things need to be on your log. And they're those things that are just on the edge that don't quite meet MUI. If you think about most of those things that are on that list, it's but for those 3 stitches or 5 stitches, or, you know, that it becomes a UI or it becomes an MUI. Still, that's one of those things I still like. How many stitches? So we're, you know, looking at those things and making sure we're thinking about those things. Next slide. And then we have the 19, the 20, you know, the 19 MUI categories that could have started on that UI log before they got actually made into that next referral process of being a truly filed MUI under investigation. So you're going to find out about that as a provider by getting that initial email from us. Anybody ever got one of those? No. Joey never gets any of those, right? So that email is going to come, and in the subject line, I always like to try to point this out. It's the year that we're in. So we're in 2022. It's always our county code, which is 023, and then whatever number MUI we are on when we get to you. Because, you know, that's just how it is when we get to you. But so that's how those are going to be done. And then beside it, it should have the categories. And it's usually some abbreviations of things. If you're ever not sure those abbreviations, or if we need to put that somewhere, I think I gave you a list at one time when we were talking about some things. We can put those on there, the general across the state, the abbreviations they use for the categories. So basically you're got that incident report, you've got your log, you're going back, this turned into an MUI. You can signify that number, which then helps you track your MUIs throughout the year. All right, next slide. So that's what I was talking about here. We noticed that on the form that the state has, it has a UI number. If you don't number your UI, some agencies do, some agencies don't. That's totally up to you. You could use that spot if there became an MUI number. If you do a UI number, you can put somewhere else on there to indicate that it became an MUI, so that you can help look at those things at the end of the month when you're reviewing and at the end of the year when you're taking this process. It's just an easy way to use the documents that are already required. All right, next slide. So, summary letter. When an investigation is over, when it's become an MUI, so we're going to shift gears a whole lot about just talking about MUI process from this point forward. So you've sent in that incident report, it's become an MUI, you've gotten that initial letter from us, and now you're waiting for the investigation to conclude, for the information to come out, and for that prevention plan to be established and followed. Now, you've been working on that prevention plan probably since the day of the incident, but you're doing that real true piece of what other cause and contributing factors, other than what you may have identified right away, have been identified by the investigator, and you're doing that. So you're gonna get a letter, it's coming from New York now, and it kind of starts out with this little scenario about how sometimes things happen, this is where we are, you know, and here's the next piece. And then it would be detailed based on your MUI that you've been involved in or that you've been assisting a team with, that you would get that notification letter. Next slide. So.
All the letters are coming from New York?
No, they're coming from us. You'll get the summary letters from either Jen or I in an email.
They're writing them though. Sorry. We no longer write the letters, so they have a different format that they follow. So that's kind of why I didn't want anybody to, if it started having something new, that lead-in section, kind of just getting everybody acclimated to that.
Yeah.
It has that little lead-in paragraph that
Is this something we get within a year or?
you should get them. Yes, if you have an MUI filed, when it is closed, you should be receiving a summary letter. If you have not received a summary letter and you have an MUI that you have not received that, let us know and we will find out how come you didn't get your summary letter. Because summary letters go out within 5 days of the closure of an MUI. Now, granted, MUIs are supposed to be done within 30 to 45 days. That's the magic rule of things. But we all know that that doesn't always happen. And we, especially if some other entity's involved in doing an investigation, our hands are tied until we can get to certain pieces of things. But if you typically haven't heard anything from anybody or even your team or anybody's discussing this with you, please call us. Because we want to make sure that that team process is happening. You know, we help identify, we help get those investigations initiated. And then the team is working through those pieces of what's the prevention plan? What are the other cause and contributing factors? What are we adding to the plan? What are we changing? What are those staffing things? You know, that's all, we're kind of not intricately involved in that piece of things. But if you're not having those conversations, we want to help you have those conversations. So know that's why we are here to help you with that. So I wanted to point out, because another thing that happens when you are looking at what MUIs you had and how those summary letters that have a finding in that letter. So that's that piece where you're going to find out whether it was indicated, it was unsubstantiated, or it was substantiated. Okay, that's going to be the key reason for that summary letter, is to help you know. And as a provider, you should be getting a letter that says, here's the cause and contributing factors that have been identified. What is your prevention plan? And as a team, you should be submitting that back. So you're going to get it like that, and then you're going to answer that, and then you should get a final drafted letter that has your prevention plan that you submitted, answering those cause and contributing factors, and identifying the pieces and other things that you may be doing based on substantiation, not substantiated or indicated. And so why I wanted to point that out is that when you're getting these things, and at the end of the year, when you're going to compile this data regarding MUIs that have been filed, these things don't matter for the fact that they were MUIs, okay? Because we had somebody submit something and I knew they had had an MUI and it wasn't on their thing. And so I call them up, they're like, hey, remember that thing from, like last June? And they're like, yeah, but it was unsubstantiated. It was still an MUI that was reviewed and processed. So, I could see where that would be something that you think that that's something that's not what you're looking at because it didn't get substantiated. So that's one of the things that I wanted to pull out here. And when I say indicated, your letter may not say the word indicated in it, but those are those MUI categories where we're not looking at whether it got substantiated or unsubstantiated. Those peer-to-peers, they happened. Somebody went to the hospital, it happened. Somebody got arrested, it happened. You kind of feel where I'm coming from, those ones. It's unapproved behavior supports, hospitalizations, attempts, the things that we don't have to decide, that 51% preponderance. it happened and we're just going to follow through, look at it, look at the cause and contributing factors for that individual and set a prevention plan. Then we've got the unsubstantiated, which obviously, but I like to take a little time to talk about that. That means it didn't reach 51% with what information we could gather at the time that it was being reviewed. So again, we are still going to do preventative measures based on an incident, not based on that final outcome. Because if something was alleged or something was suspected, and then it turned out it wasn't, there still was something that made us have that piece happen or had someone allege something to us. So we're just answering the question of that, not so much on that final determination. Next slide. So it's the substantiated ones that obviously we're going to have some additional steps we have to take. There's different trainings, there's different pieces of things, and we're still going to be doing those same other prevention measures that we were doing, whether it was indicated or whether it was unsubstantiated, because we're still addressing that something's being talked about and discussed. And then if you might notice on this one, it says physical abuse and verbal abuse. So you now, with the rule change from 2019, it's catching up, a little bit about those things that more than one category of MUI can be in a single investigation. So that also too was to help you all, because if we'd had before, it'd be, MUI number 2, MUI number 3. You'd be dealing with 2 different numbers, 2 different emails, 2 different filings. They at least listened to us and they've combined things that one incident caused more than one category to be part of a filing, but you're still going to be counting categories. So this one might come to you as MUI number 3, but you're going to have 2 categories that are going to go on that report. So we're not dealing with MUI numbers, we're dealing with category occurrences that investigations happened. Does anybody questions? Okay, because I know that whole switch and change of things with the form, but we're all caught up now because we did have to compare MUI numbers to category numbers, and everybody was like, this is making no sense, and just do the best you can and put your stuff on there and we'll help you through it.
So for an example, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's what we want to do.
The incident a couple weeks ago, I had a law enforcement significant injury and a rights violation.
Yep. You're going to have 3 categories.
But one incident.
One MUI,
Categories. Okay.
3 categories.
Okay.
So we're counting categories now.
Which I think when we pull up the
Yeah, there'll be
annual
another
report
slide.
form, it'll actually make a lot more sense than just looking at this when we're talking about counting categories.
Well, what I wanted to do is a lot of times people will call us at December and go, I think I had some MUIs. I know I had some MUIs. I know I have to be gathering this stuff. Like, how do I know how many I had? And we used to be able to run something in data warehouse, but we all know right now that we're not even going to talk about data warehouse because we can't run great reports there right now because of the whole changeover and even if a lot of people say, well, I go in and I try to do data warehouse, heck, I went to the training and sat up there at the state library and tried to learn it. And I still can't run a report in data warehouse successfully a third time or a second, it changes all the time. So how can we do this with the stuff we already have, gather it and complete this report without having to have that extra frustration? But I wanted to use the findings piece because a lot of people don't understand in the summary letter what those finding piece mean and that there could be more than one category in it. So I wanted to just spend a little bit of time educating that piece and making sure if there was questions. So next slide. So what are our primary goals that we're looking at when we're talking about this annual report? Well, we're looking at MUI trends and patterns. So does anybody know what that is? As we talk about trends and patterns, so what is a trend and pattern?
Something that repeats.
Yep, and how many do we have to have to review a trend and pattern of an MUI? Anybody know that? Because how many do you have to do a pattern for a UI?
And then 3 in a week, 5
Three
in
in
a
a
month.
certain time frame, isn't it?
3 in a week, 5 in a month. That's when we're talking about UIs. So when you're reviewing that log and you're looking down at those things and you're doing the same type of incident, 3 in a week, 5 in a month, same incidents. You're looking at those. When we switch gears, and of course, they just want to expect you, everybody knows this, we still talk about just trends and patterns, right? But the definition of an MUI trend and pattern that an agency or independent provider should be looking at is 5 and 6 months or 10 and 12 months. Okay? So of any type of MUI, we don't have to have that component of similar incident like you do for the UI and the monthly log. We are just saying this person has had 5 MUIs in 6 months or 10 MUIs in 12 months of any type that person is trending and having a pattern of things that you may be doing or developing, okay? So that's a big piece that I think sometimes gets really super confusing because I've had people call me and say, okay, well, they want me to talk about these trends and patterns of the MUI and stuff. Well, I didn't have, I had an MUI in January and I had an MUI in October. There is no trend and pattern. It's like, well, you're right. You don't because you didn't have 5, you did, but I know what they're thinking. They're thinking about that UI definition, which we spend a lot more time talking about because on a monthly basis and on a weekly basis, and when you're breaking things down and you all are out in the field trying to problem solve and get with the ISC and change the plan and do all these things, that's what we're focusing on, okay, so that we can make things and prevent better. But when we get to this, we are talking about 5 and 6, 10 in a year.
Is that time roll, I assume?
Well, that's a good question because when we used to do a semi-annual report, you were looking at January to June, July to December. So that's actually when Lorelei, came on right as the new rule started. And so we were doing all that mincing and doing those things. And so we were like, when, we as a county board take all of your all's MUIs and we look at the folks and we decide if they've had, because they might have had an MUI at day programming and an MUI at home. So they're not going to be a trend and pattern potentially for you as an agency or as an independent provider, but they're going to be a trend and pattern for us as a county. So we're, stepping back those things. So that's what she and I were like, so this person had 6, do we still break it down? And so I think the answer is no. If they had 6 at any point in time in a 6-month period. So if they had one in January, February, March, we did 6 months. If they have a break in that 6 months, and so you go, 3 months you have one, then you have a break, and then you come up again. They have 3 more, but it's not within a 6-month consecutive. I would say no to the 5 in 6 months. But if somebody had one in June and then they had, 6-month consecutive, within 6 months, yes. Does that make sense? But on the 10 in a year, I don't think we need to be, worrying if they're if they just have 10 that happened in the year, then they've made their pattern. So does that make sense? Clear as mud, right? But that's about the best way we can do that. Because we were looking at them going, okay, well, from January to June, and we were like, oh, nope, didn't have 5. Nope. But then when we looked back and saw that somebody had middle of the year, 6-month span of them, we did feel like that probably meets what their comprehension of how you're looking at that would be a trend and pattern. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I'm even thinking in the world of in the name of trauma, it might just be every summer. And so I might be fine throughout the whole year, but then summer, so over, it wouldn't work. But if you looked at multiple years, you would see a pattern of, every summer something's happening.
Exactly, and those are things
like that, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure you do, yeah.
So there are things like that you're looking at, and so, yeah, so just, and if you have questions about that and you're not sure, and then when in doubt, if you got somebody that's close on that piece of that, even if there was a 1-month break, but they've had 6, we're not going to say, oh, that was 1 month. If you're feeling like, hey, look, this person's predominantly had 6 pretty close together like that, and you want to track that or look at that or identify those things, or you made a great accomplishment with that person, put it on your report. It'll be all right. All right. And then we are looking at these things for prevention planning. trends and patterns, prevention planning, that's the name of the game. We are keeping people safe. We are finding better ways to support them. We are finding better ways to keep you all safe. I mean, there's a whole collective piece of that. And then whether you're an individual provider, whether you're an agency, we're looking at things from an agency or individual provider's perspective, and we're also looking at it for the individual. Because you may be finding things that are a trend or pattern just in your agency, or even just with your own service process, because you could have those things. So that's, we want to be looking those as our primary goals of what we're accomplishing out of this report. All right, next slide. So what do you need? So you're getting ready to do this report. You need to set yourself some time in January and make sure that between January 1st and January 31st, you get this done. That's, a big important piece. Get all those UI logs, even if they have zeros on them, get all your logs together and have that as something that you're going to be using as a tool. Get those summary letter findings, and have those available so that you can keep track, because they're going to identify each level of each, because if there's a finding for 3 categories, you're going to have 3 findings. So you're going to have those to help count yourself back to make sure you're getting your categories. And then have that 2021 annual report that you finished and your 2020 annual report that you finished and your blank reporting form that you're going to be able to kind of scratch and do your data on and do those things where you can kind of review it, get it prepared, and then you can put it into a final process. Does that make sense? So these are all things that you already have your UI logs and you've been reviewing them and you have them available. You've already got your summary letters. You got to pull out those old reports. Okay? Now, anybody in this room that worked in Fairfield County in 2022 but didn't work in Fairfield County in one of these other 2 years? Okay, so you still have to do a comparison for the county. You just don't have any in Fairfield, so you would put zeros. It's one of those important things to think about, because we do often have providers who start in the middle of the year and then they're like, I don't have 3 years, or I'm a brand new independent provider and I don't have it. Zeros are okay. Those are numbers. We use those. Okay, they're safe numbers. We can have zeros. So those are good things just to think about. Okay, next slide. So those due dates, again, just making sure everybody knows. You have to have it done by January 31st. So you can fill out your form, sign your name, put January 31st. That's totally fine. And then you have to get it to the county board by February 28th. And we're working on the data from all of your all's MUIs during that time frame to get together, get your all's reports in, and then we have to have something in by March to the state, which is then we have the stakeholders meeting, and we do those things to have that part done so that we're compiling all that data. So everything kind of has its flow of why it's happening. So next slide. Oh, one other thing. It's okay, you don't have to go back. But one other thing I want you to know is that one of the things that's been coming out across many of the accreditations across the state where the county boards are being reviewed, many of just discussions with regional managers, is they're asking specifically if we're tracking what agencies do not turn in their annual reports. So if you get a reminder, or if you get a letter in February that says, get a letter beginning of March that says, hey, we didn't get your report, we kind of need that in. You may get those this year because they are, holding accountable to us that we're supposed to be reviewing them. We're supposed to be assisting with you all. You may get your report back, or you may get a phone call from us that says, hey, you put an MUI on here that isn't yours. Now, how could that happen? Because nobody really wants those. So how could you end up with an MUI on your report that isn't yours? Oh, do I have that later?
Okay, you're jumping ahead of it.
Sorry, Jen's brain works really strange ways. So think about that question. We'll be back to the answer. All right, so we've moved on to just reminding everybody, again, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the categories, not the numbers, all 19 of them. Death one is the one that everybody gets confused because it's death where it's not suspicious and death where it is suspicious. So make sure when you're filling out your form, you keep those separate too, because we've had people put that they had like, 5 suspicious deaths. I'm thinking, how do we miss that one? Because no, they're just in the wrong death column. So we just have to change those things around. So, all right. So there's our list again. So agency providers, we're going to talk about you first. Are there any independent providers in here? Great. So agency providers first. So we'll talk about that. So we're going to talk about those ups and downs, increases and decreases. So next slide. So here's that report. So make sure, as an agency, you are using the report that says agency provider. And I tagged them into the invite.
Okay.
But I don't know that it went to everybody. I don't know if I did that right. But I did save them on my invite at least. I don't know if they went to you all, but we'll make sure you have those things. These are on the DODD's website. You can go to it, Google it, gives you some tips, does some things. Just make sure if you're an agency, you're using that form right up here where you can see where it says agency provider. Super important because you'll have a few more questions than the independent provider has. So make sure you're using the right form. So, all right, we'll move on.
Is that required to use that form?
It is not required to use the form as long as the information is the same information. Does that make sense? So if you want to duplicate it, you want to do it in a chart form, you want to do it in some way that just make sure that you don't miss any of the components. I would say that it is a fillable form that you can save and fill in, and then you can use Word documents in between if you have more information that needs to be added for each question, and just do that would be my suggestion, because it is kind of make sure you don't miss any components, and it is set up that way. Just save it, because if you don't save it, name it something else, then your information will go back to the blank template that's on the DODD. Okay, all right. So that first little part of the section, it comes down and it asks you some line questions. And so this one's in a chart form. So it's like I said, you can change it up, just get the same information in. The number of categories reported last year. So we're doing this in January for 2022, okay? So people get confused about that sometimes too, and they go, last year, or they start working on it in December and they're going, what? That's why. So you're working on it January, it's the last year, and then you're 2 years before that. So 2021, 2020. So now we're caught up where everything on your other 2 reports that you're comparing to should be categories. And then you're gonna actually come down and fill in the chart. Even if you have zeros, fill in the chart. Because if there's blank numbers there or you get yourself off, it helps you to make sure you're putting them in the right spaces. Put it in, and you have to actually take that 2021 form and transfer over your numbers from that form to this form and vice versa. And then fill in your ones for 2022 so that you have them, so that you're looking at them across from each other. Questions?
That's where when she was talking earlier about having one MUI number with 4 categories in it, that's what we're talking about. So it won't be that you're not counting that this person had 1 MUI, you're transferring that data. So it could be 1 MUI that you're counting in law enforcement, medical emergency, and neglect with just 1 number. So that's where the categories make a difference instead of the actual MUI amount of MUIs you've had.
So y'all can imagine, we're at 203 right now, I think, MUIs for the year for the county. So we have to fill out this form too. So we start out with the little hashtags, and then we go back and have to fill in our data when we're doing our review, because, we have to change it and change it and change it. So we just do our little hashes till we get all through all the categories and all the months and all the things, and put out our little form, and then we go back and fill it out. So that's how you're breaking down that piece. Next slide. Sorry.
I'm new.
All right, that's okay.
I could have done that.
Yeah.
Maybe pretty useful.
So I'm gonna glare here, I can't really. So one of the things is I tried to take each of the questions on the report so we can kind of talk through. So the first one is explain the reasons for significant differences from year to year and MUI categories that have high numbers of incidents. So this always gets people too, like, well, what's a significant increase? Well, I'm gonna tell you that it depends on how many people you're serving. So if you're an agency, but you got 5 people, your numbers that could be significant are gonna be different than somebody who has 40 people or 80 people. Does that make sense? So, so we're gonna take those things and you're gonna just take each column and you're gonna say from 2021 to 2022, wow, I had 5 in this one. This year I have 7. Okay, that's just two of an increase. If you're a small agency, that's probably not significant. That makes sense? If you're a big agency, or I'm sorry, if you're a small agency, that probably is significant. If you're a big agency, that probably is not that significant. But you want to look at your MUIs. So I want to give some magic. Oh, it's, if you've never had a XYZ MUI ever, it might be significant for your program. It might be something that you, and you're looking at your data, you're looking at your report that you want to look at and that you want to show, or you had a great success for something that came out of that, you want to show for that, right? So there is no fast, hard, wrong answer for is it a decrease or an increase? And you're going to explain why. So just to give an example, these are kind of more for larger, I kind of looked at saying, if you had an increase of 5 in a category A, those are ones where other entities are involved, probably should be doing some reviewing of those no matter what size agency, if you've got a pretty good size of those. The Bs, those are your ones that, maybe you can just look at based on your agency. And then category Cs, 10 or more if you're a big agency, if you've had a real big uptick, which you might easily with hospitalizations, that's a category C. If you've had 10 law enforcements, which we've had before, there might be something we need to step in. And this is your time to, as you're looking back and going, wow, and we can come in and do some specific prevention planning or other types of training for your staff or however you need to do that. So that's why those are going to be there. And you can use those additional pages. So if you've got 5 categories that you need to think about this question and why, you can fill out the first one and then keep moving on. Just add those pages in between. All right, next one. Identify and explain the agency's trends. So this is where you're looking at it as an agency. So if you had 3 significant injuries in one core part of your agency, this might be something that you want to look at and see and answer specifically for your agency. Maybe something, a equipment piece wasn't working and more than one person got hurt on it before somebody figured it out, or, there could be a lot of things that could happen. Plans of preventative measure. And how are you proactively addressing those trends or those patterns for your agency and continuing how you've changed maybe an annual training or you've done something or something that added to your new hire training or something that you've identified yourself that might answer that. And then previous year trends and patterns. That's where you're going to take that other report and you're going to look back and whatever you had as a trend the year before, you're going to be answering what you've done to make it better and that you're not seeing that same trend again. Because if you are, then that's going to be a level of difficulty there. And then describe any of the trends from 2021 and your successes with those. So that's where you get to pat yourself on the back a little bit. And then describe in 2021 any decreases. So if you had a whole bunch of law enforcement, so you've done something different in a home and you've had a whole lot, make sure you're pointing those out. So next slide. Trends and patterns, 5 or more, 6 in a year. We talked about that. And now you're doing this for the individual. So you've done your agency stuff. You've overviewed how it may cross over. Now you're literally taking your individuals you serve. Do they have the 5? Do they have the 10? And then you're answering the questions. That may take more than one sheet of paper too. Let's hope not too many of you have to have multiple sheets of paper for that. Okay, this is the goal. Short, stay on the form. Just kidding. All right, next slide. So previous year trends and patterns. So you're also going to look at those individuals you identified the year before. Are they in your same trends and patterns? Are they the same people? What's being done? We can have those. That happens. Or what's been better for those people that were on your trends and patterns last year and what you've done better. So that's the next thing. And you might have to do that too, depending on how many you had the year before. Next slide. Okay. So real important, date it was reviewed, put it on there. Make sure whoever did the review signs it. We don't know how many we have come in that we don't even know who we would need to call that did the data. And then we're chasing that down. So or the state may want to review something or they need to know who did it and when. So next slide. Should be at our independent provider. All right, anybody else? It was just you today? Okay, anybody on TV land today? All right, so independent providers. So your form says independent provider and has a few less things. Because you're not necessarily reviewing yourself as an independent provider as like an agency does, but you are looking at the fact that if there are people that are independent providers for 5 people, but you're independent with them each individually, or there's people that are just independent provider for 1 person. So it just depends on this form. You could be looking at that, next slide, sorry. Looking at this part, remember, you're looking at that collectively as you as an individual provider. So if you have 5 people that you're an individual provider for, your numbers are going to be reflected total for you as a provider. Okay? Do you have 1 person, 2 people? 1, okay. So if you were to add somebody next year, then you'd be looking at making sure that chart reflects everyone you serve, not just, you don't have to do a different form for each individual. If you're an individual provider, that was also something people were doing. They were sending in, and I was like, oh, you're just duplicating a lot of your time. We want to cut that out. So next slide. So you are looking for yours, like I said, at each category, what are your decreases? What are your increases that you're involved in? Because again, just like we talked about, maybe a lift is broken and more than 1 person got hurt and you had a couple significant injuries, or you had a neglect, or you had this, or you had that. You as an independent provider kind of looking at yourself and saying across things, is there something in my categories that are high for me that I'm, involved with and doing that you need to think about, especially if you're doing more than 1 person, or if you have 1 person and they're continually having the same thing, you might still be looking at that. But it's going to depend on your numbers served as to whether something's a decrease or an increase. All right, next slide. So again, you're following that 5 and 6, 10 and 12, answering those questions. If you have 1 person, you're answering the questions about that person, and you're done. One thing that I want you all to point out, though, that's on both of your things, is you see the part that says action plans, prevention measures taken to address. So you're going to make sure you put what action plans you did. The other one says, when was it added to the plan? So as a provider, whether you're an individual provider or you're an agency provider, you have the task to serve the individuals, to follow the plan that's in place, to write up the incident reports, to report to the team about things happening, build a prevention plan based on incidents or based on things that are learned about the individual, getting that information to the county board so that if you feel what's happening and that preventative measure is, I'm really saying there needs to be more staff. I'm really saying there needs to be XYZ. I'm really saying this. If you're not helping them at the county board, if you're not helping the ISCs and the team that you're dealing with know that's what you want. If you're asking for it and you're having meetings about it and it's not getting added to the plan, has to be there, it has to be done, it has to add to the plan. That's how your preventative actions happen. So we're not just doing all this stuff in a vacuum of, oh, we had this MUI, oh, we had this letter, oh, we came up with this plan, oh, we just left it. And we're going to be also following up. So another thing that the state has charged the county boards with doing is doing a little bit more follow-up about where are you? So if you have an MUI that ends and the prevention plan says they're going to go to Dr. XYZ in the next 2 months, they're going to want a verification that they saw that doctor. If something happened, we're going to know why, and the team's still working on it. And then we added something different to the plan. Make sure you have that information. If you have someone who has a trend and pattern and you had a development that needed to change the plan. Okay.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So that's only if it's a trend and pattern.
So
I was just thinking
so you should be doing that no matter what.
Because I'm thinking sometimes things happen.
Right. You should be,
It shouldn't follow the person, I guess, unless, if it's I guess I feel like it shouldn't have to be added to the.
So just like you all would as a team say, okay, this seemed like something unusual. We're going to try this as a preventative measure, put some things in tasks that don't require the plan to be changed to accomplish that. But we're talking about something that you feel in the end, if you think the service needs to be enhanced, if you think something needs to change, if you think, resource management needs to approve hours or this or that, and you get that done, or it's not, and especially something that's to the level of the fact that it needed to change a service, then it needs to be documented so that you're following the correct plan.